Welcome to Dental Business RX. Practice success in 30 minutes or less.
Thank you for calling ABC Dental.
How good really is the customer service in your practice? And to that end, how would you know? For most doctors, they won't really know if they have a customer service issue unless A, they see it directly. For example, an egregious screw up with the schedule where a patient's waiting for an hour or something like that. Or B, a patient complains. But how often will someone actually complain? And to that end, I'll give you a thought experiment here. Think of a business you've been in, a restaurant, a dry cleaner, whatever businesses you frequented, where you had a bad customer service experience. Did you complain? Did you ask to see the manager or talk to somebody? Most people don't. And the solution is, in most cases, people just don't go back. They don't complain, they just don't go back, which is sort of the opposite of what we want here. And compounding the problem for the doctor is in a patient's mouth all day long. So beyond your chair, you can't really see if there are customer service issues. So it's really up to the office manager to keep watch, but even they can't see everything, which tells us that the real long-term solution for customer service issues is to have a full buy-in and training for your team on the customer service protocol in your practice. So we know that dentistry is a service business, and to that end, it has many things in common with other service businesses, all right, which is, one, the service itself has to be good. And not to compare dentistry to an auto repair shop or a restaurant, but there is a similarity in a sense that if I go to a restaurant and the food's just bad, or if I go to get my car fixed and they just do a terrible job, or someone goes and gets their hair done and it's terrible, that's not going to work. The core service of that business isn't working. Now, in dentistry, that usually isn't the problem. The other thing that has to be good in a service business, though, is the service personnel surrounding the actual core service. Those have to be excellent. In a dental practice, that would be scheduling, accounts, etc. Or you could end up with a situation where a patient, in your case, doesn't actually make it into the service. You might be an excellent dentist. I've seen this numerous times where you might be an excellent dentist. I just don't ever get to see you because your scheduling blew me off, or I'm a prospective new patient. I didn't get scheduled, so you never even saw me. So your customer service issues started before I even walked into your business. And look, I could spend days talking about this subject, and at the root of it, to solve it long term, you're going to obviously want a fully trained team, and they're well organized. This is why, and you want to be an excellent manager. This is why we have things like the MGE Power Program, which I'll put a link to on the episode webpage, trains the doctor and the office manager as executives, how to build a team, how to organize the practice, etc. But that said, what are some immediate and simple points to check or fix that might be called customer service deal breakers? Well, I have a list of 12 of them that can make or break a patient's experience in your practice. And that's what I want to cover in this week's episode. And keep in mind, just addressing these 12 issues, even if you address 5 of them or 4 of them, can enormously increase practice goodwill and retention, reduce stress, and of course, dramatically improve practice revenues. My name is Jeff Blumberg, and I'm your host. And as I go through this, I'm making one basic assumption, and I sort of alluded to it in the intro a little bit, that I'm not going to address. And that's the assumption that the dentistry in your practice is good. Now, the reasons for that are obvious. And that's really not an issue for most owner-operator dentists. The dentistry's fine. The only time I've seen that become a problem is when, let's say, you have a satellite practice or you have an associate seeing patients and you're not really happy with the associate's dentistry. You have an associate that you wouldn't let work on yourself, but you're letting them work on patients. That's a problem. So obviously, the most important thing in a dental practice is that the dentistry is good. I'm not going to even address that in here. We're talking more about the things surrounding the dentistry, scheduling, accounts, etc. But that's a basic assumption I'm making as I go through these things. If you have a situation where you do have an associate who you're not happy with, or you think their clinical's no good, you need to fix that before you fix anything else. All right, so what are these 12 customer service pressure points? So I'm just going to go through them, discuss what they are, as well as, and these are sort of the first things a patient see, or not necessarily the first things, but it's points of patient interaction that are very, very easy to fix. So number one is obviously your staff, your team. So what do we want from our team? Number one, we obviously want them to be pleasant. We want them to be responsive. We want them to be accommodating. And the service that they provide should be more or less selfless, meaning that the attention is placed on the patient. It's not on themselves. Okay. So that can manifest in many different ways. And these are things that you can actually teach people because some people don't understand, I don't know what the word I'd use for this, sort of corporate culture or how things are supposed to work in the workplace. And you might find this with younger people, and I'm not trashing younger people at all. Younger people, we were all younger people at one point, and many of us long for the days we were younger people. The point being is, you may have somebody who has very little to no work experience. They didn't come up in the same time period you did or era you did, so they have different things that are important and other things that are not important to them. And so they're not necessarily going to be thinking the exact same way that you are. So you'll hire somebody, maybe they've got very little work experience, and they're a little bit too familiar with patients. There's Mr. Jones, and he's 70 years old, and instead of addressing him as Mr. Jones, they're calling him Joe, or Bill, or whatever his first name is, or bruh, right? But they just don't know how to interact that way. So, and they also don't know that when you're in a workplace that, you're in the workplace. It doesn't matter that you're having a bad day or you're having a bad time at home or your significant other broke up with you or whatever. Not that I'm saying those things are unimportant, but that's not something we're going to manifest in the workplace. As far as the customers are concerned, we are pleasant and happy. We're not having a bad day because we're here all about the customers. And this isn't to say to be not empathetic with any of your staff if they're having a tough time in life or something, they're not having a great day. But it does mean that staff have to understand they're putting on a bit of a show for the patients, and they're not supposed to wear their emotions on their sleeve. These are some things, some people don't know that, and they think it's totally okay to act that way like they're in school. And again, I'm not trashing younger people. It's a point of corporate culture that they don't necessarily understand. Another thing I find that's interesting, especially with newer employees, is let's say you're here at MGE, and we have a big building, so there's a lot of walking involved, right? But let's say you come to me and you go, Jeff, hey, I have an appointment with Mike. Do you know where Mike's office is? Well, what am I going to do? Am I going to walk you over to Mike's office, open the door while he's in with somebody else and go, hey, Mike, Dr. Smith's here to see you? No, that would be kind of rude. Or I'm probably not going to even point. I'm not going to go, yeah, it's over there. Go there and turn right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say, hey, Dr. Smith, would you mind having a seat? I'm going to go get Mike for you. Now, why? Why am I doing that? Because you're my customer, you're here to have an experience, you're here to be taken care of, so I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to go get that other person, have them come collect you, see if you need a cup of coffee or anything while you're waiting, because we are here to take care of you and provide excellent service. But some people don't think like that. They just think with like, oh yeah, it's over there. Obviously you're not going to lead a patient to the bathroom. Okay, yeah, it's down the hall on the right. I would just tell them that. But the point being is there's a bit of you're accommodating them more. Don't go wandering around, how do I get to the hygiene room? Well, just wander around the back till you find Helen. Like, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to lead them to the hygiene room, okay? And some people also get into the frame of mind where they get there's a bit of TMI going on, I saw this once and it was interesting. There was someone calling a practice asking for the office manager, and the receptionist was a new receptionist answering the phone. The office manager was walking out the door on their way to the restroom. And they said, wait, I see them. Hold on, wait, I think they're going to the bathroom. This was to a patient on the phone. Okay. So, again, I'm not going to assume the worst with all these staff, okay? I'm just going to assume that they need some polish here because they don't understand that. Instead, you say, who are you calling for? I'm calling for the office manager. All right, well, excuse me, hold on one second. Put them on hold. Oh, I'll be back in 5 minutes. Okay, great. She said that she would be able to call you back in 5 minutes. Is that all right? Can I get your number? The idea of we're trying to create a kind of a good show, a good environment for the patient where we're being very accommodating and very helpful does need to be trained in a bit here. Again, same thing. Patient comes into the practice. You want to make sure that whoever's at the front seems approachable. They don't seem bothered. They don't seem too busy. They don't seem frustrated. In other words, I could come and just talk to your receptionist all I want, or talk to your scheduler all I want, tell them about my day. And, wow, I had a hard time finding your practice. I don't feel like I'm bothering them or that they're so busy they can't talk to me. Or they seem like they're aggravated or irritated, so I don't want to talk to this person. These are things that you have to instill because then the environment feels welcoming. So my suggestion on this would be to practice this, So a patient just came in, show me how you greet a patient. Okay, great. Well, could you do this instead? Okay. Or ask them to have a seat. See if they would like, you may have different things in your practice. You could offer them a water, a coffee, whatever you do, whatever's, wouldn't offer them a Snickers bar, especially if they're going to hygiene. But, something to make them feel like they're at home and welcome. And one thing I'm going to suggest as I go through this, because this is kind of tough as the doctor, and it may be tough even if you have your spouse do it or the office manager or whomever, but you want to somehow be able to walk into the practice or have someone walk into the practice and look at this from a patient's eyes or a patient's view. So maybe your spouse walks in and looks at how they're greeted, but obviously your front desk is going to greet them better than they might greet a patient potentially because they know your spouse. You might have a friend do it. You might have somebody do it. But I would want the mailman greeted that way. I want everybody who walks into the office greeted in a friendly, nice, welcoming way and feel like they're being welcome. And part of the problem, and I've said this before, I feel for receptionists and I feel for schedulers in the sense that on the one hand, they want to make sure that your schedule is full with the proper type of procedures or whatever. On the other, they're also being depended upon to deflect all the sales inquiries you're getting or salespeople calling or stockbrokers or whatever. So they can get into this weird frame of mind where on the one hand, I'm supposed to blow these people off and on the other, I'm supposed to be welcoming for all these other people. Regardless of the fact that maybe it's a salesperson showing up at the practice and they want to talk to the doctor, even if they can't, there's no reason that the people at the front shouldn't be polite. There really isn't any reason why they shouldn't. Hey, thank you for coming today. Can I have your card? I'll let the doctor know that you were here. Thank you so much. There's really no reason. They don't have to get rude. Now, if the person gets rude or nasty or whatever, even then you would expect them to keep their composure and go get the office manager who can take care of this person, which most people aren't going to be that way. But that would be the standard policy anyway. If a patient's rude or whatever, I would want whoever's handling this person to still keep their composure, not lose their cool. Go grab the office manager who can take care of this so it doesn't keep bothering the staff. The other thing that can happen too, especially if you're doing a repetitive process, you're doing a crown or someone's answering the phone or someone's scheduling a new patient and they've already scheduled 8,000 new patients in their career, it can get a bit quote unquote old. I've done this so many times or whatever. You got to break people of that in the sense that they need to keep it new. For all these other, for that new patient that's calling, this is the first time they're calling your practice. Just because the person scheduled 8,000 new patients before them, I need them just as good as they were when they scheduled those other 8,000. They can't mail it in. They have to remember this is new for that person. All right, so that's the first thing. You want your staff. That's the attitude you want to cultivate amongst your team. I would definitely do exercises for it, especially specific things like I mentioned, like going to get someone, conversation, how to greet people, things of that nature. You just do exercises till you're comfortable with it. And obviously, you want to make sure that the people that you have at the front actually like people and are comfortable interacting with people, because if they're not, they're going to have problems in this regard. They have to at least have basic communication skills. So the next thing is answering your phone. I am not a fan of a recording answering my phone. I want a live person answering my phone, and I don't want the phone to ring more than 3 times. Ideally, it's picked up on the first ring. And this is something that you can check if you listen to your phone calls. And I would definitely do this on a routine basis. I would want to listen to phone calls coming into my practice. You probably have software for this. I would dedicate at least a half hour a week to where I'm listening to this or the office manager is listening to it, to make sure, because this is the first point of contact with the practice, and you may detect problems long before they become big problems if you're doing this on a routine basis. So I want the phone call obviously answered ideally on the first ring, no more than 3 rings, and I want to check that by recording. Same thing, I want the person answering the phone to sound good. They clearly enunciate their name, they greet the person warmly, and they quickly establish why the person is calling. All right, so now this is where it gets interesting. If the person answering my phone is also scheduling patients, and this is where you have to be smart about how you do this, because this could show you whether you have a few problems that you may not even be aware of. So let's say my phone is not being answered quickly, or the person answering the phone doesn't sound like they really have it together, or they're putting the person on hold continuously to answer questions, or they're putting them on hold for too long. Well, this can tell me I may have a number of problems. If the phone's not being answered quickly enough, either the person at the front isn't doing their job, or they may be overloaded. So this is where I want to have a clear idea of how much phone volume I'm getting. If the phone's constantly ringing, and I'm expecting that person to schedule patients and answer the phone, I'm already creating a problem for them. And it's going to manifest in a couple different ways. One, they're going to constantly have to put people on hold because they're checking patients out and answering the phone and scheduling patients. That's bad customer service. I don't want them to have to put people on hold, number one. Number two, If they're handling this all themselves, in other words, they're not routing it. It's not like I'm answering the phone. Thank you for calling ABC Dental. My name is Jeff. I can help you. Hi, this is Bill. I got a postcard in the mail. Oh, Bill, great. What's your full name? Like I get all the data really quickly, and I find out they're a new patient. They're looking to schedule. If I have somebody who schedules new patients, I would route that call immediately. That's fine because then I can pick up the next call and I don't feel like I'm stressed or overloaded. If I'm having to schedule that patient and now the phone's ringing again, now we have a problem and I'm potentially limiting the number of new patients that we're getting because now I'm putting the other guy on hold or I'm putting this person on hold and maybe I'm not that trained so I don't know how to answer questions. Ideally, receptionist is receiving calls and routing them. Now, that really depends on the size of your practice, but as your practice gets larger and the phone volume increases, you might want to separate these functions of reception and scheduler. Otherwise, what you'll have is you'll have a receptionist constantly putting people on hold, which will then make them feel aggravated because they can't get anything done, and that will show through when they speak to patients. So that's just something to be aware of. Putting people on hold, making them wait, etc. Bad customer service. My receptionist sounding annoyed because he or she is having to constantly put people on hold and is overloaded also doesn't, resonate well with patients. Next thing, which is obvious, is the office is clean, reception is clean, and it looks good. Now, you might go, well, I need to remodel this, that, the other. You don't have to remodel, and maybe you do eventually, but there's no reason the office should ever be dirty or not look decent. Paint does not cost that much money. Cleaning supplies are cheap. Sure, maybe you need to redo your floors. Sure, maybe you need to reupholster your chairs. I get it. But there's no reason they can't be clean and look good in the interim. And that's something that's very controllable. There's nothing that's a quicker turn-off than walking into a healthcare practice and it's dirty or dusty. So this is something that you want to be a bit of a freak about. You want to be a clean freak with regards to the practice. And this is something that you could walk around and look at regularly. Next point is, on point 5 here, I haven't been counting, sorry, is how receptionist greets patients, right? And I kind of referred to this earlier when I was talking to staff, the staff in general. I want, again, people walking into my reception area to feel very welcome and comfortable. So this is something that you want to engender in your team. People feel happy to be there. They're offered something. They're asked to take a seat. They're not made to wait very long, which I'm going to get into here in a second. But they feel like it's a happy place to be. That's the environment I want to cultivate. I don't want to cultivate a hectic or crazy environment where people feel like they have to beg me if I'm the front desk person for some attention. I want them to feel comfortable. All right, which gets us to this next point. Point 6 is I don't want patients to ever wait more than 10 minutes. I prefer it to be less than 5. Ever. Like ever. So if patients are waiting longer than they should, let's say my appointment's at 2 and I'm waiting till 2:15 until I'm seated, and this is a regular thing, and you can track it in a given day, and this is something I do recommend. Have your front desk look at the schedule for that day, and you can print off a copy of the schedule that you keep at the front, and you note down A, when the patient arrived, all right, and B, when the patient was actually seated, and then look at it at the end of the day or the following morning, and you'll start to see if you have a problem. Then maybe record it the next day, and you'll start to see if you have a pattern. If people are waiting more than 10 minutes, that's a drag. Nobody wants to wait that long, even if they have a cell phone they can read in the meantime. You don't want to do that. So usually when you see that, it comes back to 2 basic problems, or really 3 basic problems. Actually 2. One is you're not running a scheduling system. And I've talked about this in other podcast episodes as far as setting up a scheduling system. We also have it's a couple things you can do if you want to get a scheduling system. One, you can go to our online platform, DDS Success. We have something called the Art of Scheduling, which gives you a scheduling system you can use that keeps you running efficiently and not working through lunch and seating people on time. And we have this is my shameless plug, folks. We have a special code for DDS or for Dental Business RX listeners, which is RX269 if you want to save money on that for the subscription. It's a no-contract subscription. You can cancel anytime. We also have a free seminar we do here at MGE. It's virtual, called The Art of Scheduling Productively. You can check that out. I'll put a link to that on the episode webpage again as well, so that you can kind of see one of those. It gives you the basics of a system. Back in the early 2000s, everybody had a scheduling policy. Now it seems very few people do. Like I'll go into a practice and I'll ask, like, how do you determine how long this patient needs? And, well, we do whatever the doctor tells us. Then you talk to the doctor and you go, like, well, how long is this procedure going to actually take you to do? Oh, well, I don't know, maybe an hour and a half, but they've only scheduled them for an hour. It's not a schedule, it's more of a suggestion. So they're scheduling a patient for an hour and a half procedure, but they've only scheduled them for an hour, and then they have another one scheduled at 2. And then everybody's running around and everybody feels like they're busy and running around crazy, but they're doing that because there's no system. You're not benefiting anybody that way. That's one of the reasons why you start to see huge wait times and things like this, is you don't have an actual system that you're following with an accurate way of scheduling people so that they get in and out as it's been scheduled. The other thing too is I've seen it where, doc brings a patient back and they're supposed to do, maybe the patient needs 5 crowns and they're supposed to do 2 today. And they talk to the patient, they decide they're going to start all 5 today. So then the procedure, which was supposed to take an hour, now is going to take 2.5 hours. And then that screws up the rest of the day. Or you'll see it where a doctor's presenting a treatment plan and the patient's not closing and they run out of time and they spend an extra 20, 30 minutes with the patient. So this is where, again, this goes back to a scheduling system. You do what you're scheduled to do. You always bring the patient, unless you have time to do the other stuff without messing with anybody else's appointment. So if I've spent 20 minutes presenting a treatment plan and it's not closing, and my next patient is here, maybe I'd push it 5 more minutes, but after that, I got to disengage and get into this next patient because it's important that I keep things on time. Because again, when you start to get a reputation of making people wait, well, then they start to think, well, then I'll just show up late, and then you have anarchy in the practice. All right, next point is, and this, some people do this and some people don't. I would never leave a patient alone in the operatory. So let's say you have the doctor and the assistant working on a patient. Doc leaves the room to go see another patient. The assistant stays with the patient. And the assistant may leave the room for a second to go get something, but the assistant is assigned to and working with that patient. Leaving a patient sitting in your dental chair with nothing to do and they're just kind of hanging out is just bad customer service. You'd be surprised how it does not go over well with patients. Next one, and this is something I found happening a lot more. Again, these are things that I was used to as sort of a matter of course back in the day, and I see it less and less these days, is when a patient's dismissed, you want to make sure you're giving them clear post-op instructions, written and otherwise, whether it's a link and something in writing, doesn't matter. And you want to make sure that you at least give the apparency that when you're giving this to them, like here are the instructions, let's go through them real quick, that you have all the time in the world to answer these questions. I don't care if it's your dental assistant doing this. You've just done some extractions. So now here's what we want you to do when you go home. So let's go through this real quick and explain it to them. When patients leave after this type of stuff and they have no instructions, you end up inevitably getting phone calls, and maybe they forgot to ask you a question when they called, or worse, you give them some extractions and then they go and order, a big gulp and end up with dry socket, right? I'm just seeing this more and more. I don't know why. I would make sure that they left with this really beautiful post-op instructions on my letterhead, maybe in a little office folder, and I would actually have my assistant sit down with them and explain all of it to them. Let's go through this together. Okay, do you have any questions at all? Now's the time to ask. And look, if you have any problems, you call us. I want to make sure that you take care of this, whether it's post-implant placement, post-extraction, whatever it is, because patients are going to ask stuff like this. You might even have post-op instructions as well as a little FAQ almost on the back of it. And then I would put it on my website too. Why not? It's extra content, and that would help from a search engine optimization perspective. Nothing wrong with having that. So if you have really nice post-op instructions for your patients, as well as a little FAQ, can I use my electric toothbrush after having this done? Can I do all any kind of questions you've ever been asked? Just have it on a nice handout you give the patient. You can also give them a link if they want to go look at it again online, and you can also put it on your website. It'll help you with SEO. But I've just been seeing this less and less and less these days, and it's just bad customer service. You've just done a surgical procedure with the patient. You sent them off, and they're not really clear on exactly how they're supposed to take care of themselves. And that can lead to, in the worst case scenario, failure, right? Implant failure or dry socket, things like this after extractions. All right. Next point has to do with scheduling. Patients should be able to get into your practice quickly. So if I call your office and I'm a patient of record, and let's say for whatever reason I did not get scheduled for a cleaning last time I was in and I noticed that I'm coming due, and then I call your practice and I can't get in with the hygienist for 3 months, and I'm flexible on my schedule. That's the other thing. I'm flexible on my schedule. Not like I need a 5 o'clock appointment. Like I'm flexible. I'll come in at 11 in the morning. And I can't get in for 3 months. That's a problem. So you have to make sure that you have a decent amount of hygiene availability. These are things, like all the things I'm bringing up are things I would either do or check, because these are points that are going to sit badly, and they're very easy to fix with your patients/customers. Now, if it's for the doctor, let's say I need a couple fillings, and I was leaving the practice. It was the end of the day. Nobody was there to schedule me, let's say, whatever. So I was told to call back the next day, and I call back the next day, and the next time the doctor can see me is 5 weeks from now. That's a problem. I should be able to get in within the next week. Now, if this is a real situation where the doctor is having to push, especially kind of secondary type treatment plans, fillings or simple stuff, weeks and weeks and weeks in advance because their book's so solid, well, then one of two things are wrong. Either one, you need a decent scheduling system so that you're a little bit better organized, where you're properly double booking, or two, you might need an associate. I wouldn't know which unless I looked at your book, but this would be something that I would definitely recommend you take a look at. No one wants to wait 5 or 6 weeks. Now, if it's on them, if I tell you, well, look, I'm going to be out of town for the next 4 weeks, well, then fine, schedule me for 5 weeks from now. But you should be able to accommodate me sooner than that. All right, next point, number 10 here. And this is something, again, this is really weird. It's like I've seen certain things drastically improve over the last 20 years. The number of procedures a doctor can do, especially implant dentistry, has come leaps and bounds over the last 20, 25 years. But I've seen some things get worse. And this is probably one I actually did last week's episode on this a little bit, is how accounts are managed. Accounts need to be kept straight. What do I mean by that? Meaning your accounts receivable should be accurate. And there should be a system with which accounts are collected on. If you keep sending me a statement and it says I have a $1,000 balance, but it really was stuff that should have been filed with the insurance company, or someone forgot to enter the discount that I got for using Care Credit or something like this, and you're telling me I owe you $1,000 when in fact I don't owe you $1,000, that is going to piss me off. Account problems will upset people. People get very upset about money. So you want to make sure that your accounts are straight, that they're accurate. They accurately reflect what the patient owes, what the insurance company owes, or if nothing is owed, that has to be accurate. So I went over in last week's episode a system to actually collect regularly, or not regularly, but a system to collect patient balances so you don't end up with these small dangling balances aging into oblivion. Within the next couple of weeks, I'm going to go over what to do about problem accounts. But you want to make sure you resolve all of these as quickly as possible because account issues will upset people. So you want accounts kept straight. This is something I would look at. And how do you look at this? Have your accounts receivable report pulled. Now, let me give you a couple caveats here. If you take prepayments from patients, or if you end up, let's say I have my insurance paid more than expected. So I have a $200 credit balance on account with you, and you normally don't refund those, let's say. Or you take prepayments, you want the accounts receivable pulled without credit balances. And I'll tell you why, because that will tell you what people actually owe you. If I pull an accounts receivable report, and let's say I'm doing prepayments and I do a lot of large cases. Let's say I'm doing a lot of FMR or All-on-X. All-on-X cases especially because those could take months to deliver, and I'm not charging it all out at once. But let's say I get paid $40,000 for a double arch case. So I get paid 40, and I only charge out like 10 within the first couple weeks. So I've got a $30,000 credit balance sitting on account. Now let's say I do at least a couple different full arch cases a month. Well, now I'm going to end up accumulating these huge credit balances over time that eventually I deliver as these cases mature, but that's going to be weighted against what patients actually owe me. So let's say I have $300,000 in patient credits sitting in my accounts receivable report. This is delivery that I owe to patients, $300,000. But then I have an accounts receivable of $400,000, meaning patients owe me $400,000. Well, when you just pull your basic AR, what it's going to look like in most cases, unless you specify otherwise, is I'm owed $400,000, I owe in delivery $300,000, so my accounts receivable is $100,000. You get that? Meaning I have $300,000 in credit balances, $400,000 that's owed to me by patients. So then in the default position for most softwares is it's just going to tell me that the net difference, $100,000, is my accounts receivable. When in fact, my actual accounts receivable, the money I'm owed, is $400,000. So I would pull a report and I would exclude credit balances for this first step. and I would want to look at, do I have any balances over 60 days, 90 days, 120 days? Because I should never have balances that are that old. Once they hit a certain point, they should be going to collection. And if they're getting to the point where they're going to collection, it either means that the office is not being very active in collecting on these accounts, or I don't have a system like where to send them afterwards. Or the patient might be pissed off and in disagreement because they think the insurance company owes all that money. The bottom line is none of those conditions are correct. That it should all be resolved, because that will create a lot of patient upset and it will wreck goodwill. I would also recommend pulling credit balances at some point too if you do a lot of prepays or you end up with a lot of credit balances on account, because again, I don't want to sit on those forever either. You might find a patient like, gosh, it's Mrs. Jones. She was supposed to come back and get that case delivered, and she never did. And you've got this huge credit balance on account. You want to go after her and get her back in as soon as possible. All right, point number 11. This one might strike you as a little weird, but I'm going to throw it out here. It is a customer service point. It's totally within the control of the doctor. And you can do with this what you will, but obviously if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you know that I'm a fan of presenting full treatment plans, telling a patient exactly what they need. And I've gone over the procedure on how to do that effectively so a patient is most likely to accept. But I would recommend that you present full treatment plans. That is a point of customer service, because I want you to, again, take the viewpoint or perspective of a patient for a minute. So I've come to your practice. Let's say I'm a new patient. You're doing a thorough examination on me, scans, imaging, etc. I'm expecting you to tell me what you found and what you want to do to fix it. Now, am I going to be upset if I thought I needed nothing and I now need a $15,000 treatment plan? Yeah, I might be. And there are ways to alleviate that. I've talked about that in other episodes, like how to lessen the blow, so to speak. But the bottom line is, that's the truth. That's the truth. You're not holding anything back. You're not worried about upsetting me because you're the doctor and your primary interest is in getting me healthy. And you're not apologetic about that in any way. That's why I came to you in the first place. You're being confident. Here's Jeff. This is what we found. This is why it's a problem. This is what I want to do to fix it. This is how I would do it. This is how much it costs. Okay? Now, I might not do it. I may not accept. But you know what? You at least told me what I needed, didn't I? Didn't you, rather? You did. And I want you to look at the other way that might be handled and why that would be a problem. So I came in. You told me everything I needed. Okay, good. I accepted it or I didn't. Okay, fine. How about this? So instead I come in, I need $15,000 worth of work. You're really concerned that if you tell me I need that much, I'm going to get upset or scared and I'm going to leave. All right. So you tell me that I need some scaling because I've got gum disease. All right. So I come in for the scaling, and while I'm there for the scaling, you tell me that I need some crowns. Okay. And then, maybe the next visit you tell me I need to replace some missing teeth with implants. It's starting to feel mildly scammy at this point. That's like me bringing my car to a transmission shop or to an auto repair shop because it's knocking. And they find all kinds of problems with it. They only tell me what's causing the knock. They fix that, and now they tell me, oh, and by the way, you wonder when it's going to end. So to me, telling a person what you need and maintaining a professional, confident attitude while you're doing it, because you know you can fix it, is a point of customer service. Whether I do it or not, at least I know you're a straight shooter, number one. Number two, you'll find that patients who are most likely to refer are patients who do their full treatment plans. If you do a big case, it doesn't even have to be a big case. You just fix everything I had going on. You did 6 fillings and you did an implant and 2 crowns. It's not a huge case. You fixed me up though. My teeth are clean. They look beautiful. I got them bleached. I'm super happy. I'm going to send all my friends to you. And your office is doing all this other stuff I'm talking about. They're friendly. They're nice. My account's kept straight. Of course, I'm going to send people to your office. Patients who get the treatment that they need are more likely to refer. Patients who don't, especially the patient that you've told needs scaling, and now you tell them they need crowns, and then you tell them they need implants, they're not going to be confident. They're not going to be excited to send people into your office. So presenting full treatment confidently is a good point, or a point of good customer service. And lastly, this isn't necessarily a point, but you can always do things that are unique to your practice. For years, I've seen all kinds of stuff, headsets, VR headsets, movies on the ceiling. You can use your imagination. And you can look at what similar practices to yours do. Or, one of the cooler things I heard, if you're a foodie, you may be familiar with the restaurant 11 Madison. Park in New York City. They were the number one restaurant on the planet for a while. In the I forget which magazine, Eater magazine or Restaurateur, one of the magazines or one of the trade publications ranks the top 50. They were number one for a while. And one of the things they did is they went and ate at a bunch of 3 Michelin star restaurants. The chef and the kitchen staff and the front of the house staff went and ate at a few of these restaurants, and they went with a very specific objective. They already knew these other restaurants had 3 Michelin stars or were doing things well. They wanted to look at what they didn't do well. I just thought that was fascinating. And in their case, they found out that the coffee was not great, and none of them, pretty much nobody, they ignored customers who were interested in beer. They were all about wine, but they kind of ignored people who were into beer. So they got really good with beer and coffee as well as their wine list, and it helped them on their rise to the top. So the point I'm making is you might look at, even in your own practice, maybe you've got a pretty good handle on this stuff, and you might go, well, these are the things we do really well. What don't we do well? And how could we fix that? Or other practices that you're aware of. Wow, they do this, and this really well, but I really would fix this. And you can come up with some really cool, bright ideas when you do this. I'd recommend that you meet with your team, tell them you're prioritizing patient service. You want patients to feel like they're really taken care of and they're having a great experience in your practice, and this is why it's important to you, because you want to make sure that you're taking care of them. And you could open the floor to ideas. Some people come up with some really cool ideas. I'd have a team meeting about it at your staff meeting and see what you get. And on the other individual type stuff, you can ask your spouse to keep an eye on it, the office manager, maybe a friend, one of your dental assistants can walk around, see if patients are waiting, etc. And like I said, don't immediately, and listen to the calls, obviously, don't immediately assume the worst with your staff if any of this stuff is getting messed up. In a lot of cases, your staff want to do well. In most cases, the majority of cases, they want to do well. They want to do a good job, and they either need more training or they may be overloaded. So you also have to be aware of that too. And if you incentivize great patient handling and reinforce wins that patients have with your office, that is also very, very helpful. So, you're incentivizing the idea of taking care of patients. So you might give some type of an award or a reward, especially if somebody is particular, like let's say multiple patients mention a specific dental assistant. You should make a big deal out of that. Reward them somehow. And I would, if patients, like when you have your staff meetings, if patients are sharing specific wins that you're having, maybe they didn't even write it up or share it, but you might have a testimonial video that they filmed, or a patient told you, that you delivered their veneers and they cried, they were so happy. I would talk about these things because it's very easy to forget the effects that you're creating on people's lives when you're working on them, and it helps your staff to know this. In any event, placing a focus on this is not only great for your patients, but it's great for your practice and great for your team. It gives them a greater sense of accomplishment, and it orients them to how they're truly helping people and changing their lives for the better. And with that, I'll wrap up this week's episode. I do hope this helps. If you have any questions about any of this, you can reach out to me directly at jeffb@mgeonline.com. I have those links to DDS Success as well as the artist scheduling seminar that I mentioned earlier if you want to check it out on the episode webpage. If you want to know more about MGE, you can find us online at mgeonline.com or call us at 800-640-1140. Folks, have a great week, and we will see you at the next episode.